Welcome to episode 700 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Dan Hilton, and yes, I did say 700, which meant that because Francesc Tomas, he has been a little bit unavailable, as we know, for the last few years, I had to bring another one of the OGs, and I do say OGs because, yes, of course, Kevin Williams, you fit the bill to that, certainly. But when I say OG, do you remember your first appearance?
I don't remember much of anything because that's like my brain works like flash memory, and so when I go to bed, like that's all gone. Uh,
Well, I don't want to drag you too far for those watching on YouTube, but if you're listening, it's fine. But I can tell you when you first came on the show, it was January 23rd, 2018, episode 58 of 700. You did have the same amount of hair then, and I was a lot less gray. I think that is 7 years ago. That is all that I can say has changed. Fortunately for the listeners, I mean, you look happier now because then you were in the trenches of working hard and working for the man. But now, Kevin Williams, you've been enjoying retirement for the last little bit here. So I think there's a calm that swept over you from episode 58 until now.
Yeah, no, it's I would recommend retirement to anyone. I think it's a lovely way to spend life, and the main thing is that every minute of every day is yours, right? So, whatever you want to do, you do it, and you forget that even so. Once I was talking with someone recently about being retired, I said, okay, so you wake up at, let's say, 7 a.m. You get to work at 9. You work from 9 to, like most people, 6 or 7, right? And then you go home. That's another hour. And then you have dinner, right? So you're now at about 9, 10 o'clock. And you go to bed and you wake up. And so you probably have, at the most, 3 or 4 hours a day that are yours, right? Where you're awake and conscious and, full of life, right? 3 or 4 hours. When you're retired, it's all yours. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. Just riding, lifting, eating, thinking about Barcelona when I turn my mind to it. The weird thing is, so I am 2 years from getting my 25-year pin. How about that?
Nice. Well, I was going to say,
Is,
I am pleading with people, if you do have those 3 hours a day, I am back on Big Up doing the streams again. So if you do have the 3 hours, I did a Club World Cup stream yesterday for PSG Real Madrid, which I, even in retirement, wouldn't recommend that people watch unless you're a PSG fan and all those things. So we did a little bit of hate watch yesterday on Big Up. So I remind you, please become a free community member on there. Again, it's free. You have a membership and you just watch me, sit in the chat with me, hang out for the matches. And I will be beginning those matches again on Big Up for the preseason games, which are coming up in 2.5 weeks' time. And the reason we're talking about this is because it's hard to believe that with PSG and Real Madrid, Xabi Alonso even said that yesterday the Club World Cup was the end of Real Madrid's season. Well, Barcelona on Sunday, so in 4 days from now, begins their preseason with Hansi Flick and company. Some of them already even returned. And I was on the stream yesterday, Kevin. For those who are listening, I want to just give you a little bit of outline of today's show. We're going to do a little bit of missing out on Nico Williams. Nobody's heard from me since then. We're going to talk a little bit Marcus Rashford. We're going to do the Javier Tebas recent controversy, if there is one. We'll talk, some one-to-one. We got some agent talk. We've got some Ter Stegen talk. And then we're going to end with some Rakitic fun. So there's a lot going on that doesn't feel so positive that people would be excited about. And that's why, Kevin, I know it seems antithetical because I think people view your opinions online and in a certain way as far as optimism and pessimism around the club. But I will say, Kevin, and I have not been in, again, now the 8 years that I've been doing this optimistic in a preseason, even with Messi in tow through those years. Because again, I started this in 2017. So Neymar had just been sold and I was so despondent about the way that the Neymar money was spent that, and the links to Felipe Coutinho, again, back in the summer of 2017, that I can say that every summer I've always said, there's something here. There's something here that's making me feel uneasy, and there's always something going on. And that has continued. That has been the trend all the way up through. And I can say, looking at this season, the continuity with Hansi Flick, year 2, the fact that so many of the vital players in this club are under the age of 25. I counted 11 of the 25 most important players right now around Barcelona are under the age of 25. And what that means is that, yes, while progress is not linear, players can get better. And if half of those players get better and push through whatever ceiling we put on them, things could be good. And Marc Bernal, I know there's not a lot of, other than Juan Garcia, I know there's not a lot of transfers coming in or rumors being buzzed around right now. It seems like things have gone quiet. And even if things go quiet, bringing in a goalkeeper in Juan Garcia and then re-adding even hopefully 80% of what Marc Bernal was last season, I am very happy about what this team is. And I do think that, yeah, there might be other positions that Barcelona would love to have a backup left back. They'd love to have some kind of touchline winger on the left. Yes, they would love to have probably another center back there and figure some things out and a striker for the future and all those things. But I also think that, Kevin, the midfield could dictate solutions elsewhere across the field. Because whether it's a good problem for Hansi Flick to have or not, with Bernal coming back, Costello being good when he was on the field, at least good enough to be in a treble-winning side, I honestly believe that. Costello is, you do need guys 20 through 25, and if Marc Costello is certainly a good enough player for that kind of position, then you have Gavi, Pedri, De Jong, and Bernal. Did I recounted players there? No, it was, yes, Bernal, Pedri, Gavi, De Jong, and then again, in front you have Dani Olmo, Fermin Lopez. But I'm just talking about those two positions where all those players played last year. Yes, some guys might get frozen out, but I do think that there are solutions. Whether, I don't know, Kevin, do you think that not having a natural solution to things, but I feel like you've got a lot of really good players that if Hansi Flick can figure out how to put those, at least most of those pieces on the field together and rotate them and keep everybody healthy and fit, I think the midfield for Barcelona could be what dictates wins and losses this season.
Yeah, I mean, as I've said before, last year's team was one of two things away from possibly having a trouble. They were that 1 minute of not being done, or Marc Bernal, or even, Casado. You just needed someone back there. I mean, look, when you watch that sequence where Inter equalized, and you watch what Frankie de Jong did, I'm sorry, I know people think I hate him, blah, 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 but he was horrific. And so that one instance, right, of leaving Martin there alone, because don't forget that Kubarsi won the header but lost the sequence because he fell down, leaving Martin by himself. And Frankie de Jong was just sort of running around, vaguely trying to be nowhere and be anywhere. And it was just a weird sequence. And my first thought was, if one of those two were there, then they back up Martin, and they win that ball, and it's over, right? So like the main thing Barcelona needed to do was solve goalkeeper. That's the main thing, because Szczesny against Inter was not good. Sorry, I know people love him, but he was not good. And so you have to have someone who makes the kinds of saves, who's young, dynamic, who comes off the line, who takes chances without conceding penalties. You have to have that kind of keeper. Szczesny's not it. Ter Stegen, who I think is a better netminder than Szczesny right now, is not it, right? So you have to resolve that keeper. Now that they've done that, they have all the other parts. I mean, I've mentioned trying Balde at left wing, right? And you use Martin as a, or Ford as a fully defensive fullback, right? That's another option. I mean, Flick has lots of options, and I think that, people forget they were 1 minute away last year, right? If they had just done what Pedri told them to do when he told them to do it, they would likely have been in the final against PSG. Could they have beaten PSG, who I think right now is the best team in Europe? I don't know. Then they hit a shot. Now, so I think the season for me is hinging on two things: Gavi and whether he is fully back, and how much of what we saw from Bernal will he be available to give the club? Because I mean that midfield defense without he and Casado was a disaster, and so that meant that the back line saw people it shouldn't have been seeing. It meant that the fullbacks needed to pinch in to help those mids, which meant that there were welcome mats on the flanks and attack. I mean, having no midfield, no real DM hurt so much because I mean Christensen was broken all the time. Garcia was a little bit more defensive than that whole position needed. So I think that when you get that back and resolved, I mean, Flick has everything he needs to begin to build the best team in Europe. Will
Yeah,
he? Can he? Oh,
yeah, I think it's going to be a different piece of content for me as we go through the preseason, because I think there is almost one big question for every player. And so many of those players, though, are going to be, can they keep the same form or can they keep the same levels they did last year? Because I think regression is going to be, I think, my biggest, when I go through the list, like, yes, it's certain players, can they raise their level? And I think I want to be more particular about what I say. All right, this would be how this player raised their level, this player raised their level. But a lot of them, to that point, can Negro Martinez be who he was between August and April of last season
no.
or March? Right. I mean, and that's, Kevin, that's not how we make content. You know that. You can't just say no. Then it's people are scrolling to the next thing. You know that. Come on. So, but Eric Garcia is, can he remain at that level? Again, he's still only 24. And I think people have already said, well, he's this thing. But no, he's only 24. And he had the best season of his career the last two seasons. So his 23 year or at Girona and his 24th year or at Barcelona, 23, he turned 24 last season during the season. So when he was 22, 23, 24, is that crazy to think that he was better than he had ever been before at the age of 22 to 24, that he was better than he was when he was 19 and 20 years old at Man City? That's crazy, Kevin. I couldn't believe that. So anyway, the point is about Eric Garcia, and that I think exists for a lot of players. Like Fermin Lopez is still 22, and he scored more goals last season than Nico Williams did. So there was this thing where, how much do we want out of Fermin Lopez?
Hey.
Right, exactly. We got to be quiet about that. But I also wanted to use that to transition to Nico Williams, because I think mostly, yes, you and I are a little too much on a broken website right now on social media, but I feel like most people with sense in their heads was like, okay, actually, at the number that Athletic Club we signed Nico Williams, I think people were more frustrated not about losing out on Nico Williams, the player, because again, yes, he's very good. Yes, he solves a lot of problems at Barcelona by being a touchline, dribbly winger who can attract attention. And when you have players like Nico Williams and Lamine Yamal on either side, defenses really do get out of sorts. And who does that leave space for? The guys in the middle. That is whoever you have in the middle with Dani Olmo or Fermin Lopez or Rafinha. And that leaves space for Lewandowski, who probably does need some 1v1 against the center back situations. Can't go on 2v1 situations or cannot pull too many more rabbits out of his hat at his age. So losing out on that profile of Nico Williams is sad, but I think people were more frustrated that, okay, that profile is gone, because Nico Williams himself, as the young player that he is, yes, he still has room to grow and can get better and better. But again, you and I look at the numbers. And so what Athletic Club gave Nico Williams per year, if I'm Barcelona, I'm out on that. I said it many times, like that is a 13 million per year player, which is about where Rafinha is, about where Koundé is. And if you're giving him 18 to 20 to 22 million, now I don't know exactly what the Athletic Club number is going to be, but I've heard it's somewhere to around 20. That's too much. It's too much for Nico Williams. Like the goal production that he gave you last season is not equivalent to 22 million euros per year. And good on him to be a club legend at Athletic Club, because again, you've been following them for, not following them, but you've been watching Athletic Club as long as I have. And he could be the defining player of the 21st century. It really is. Like Iker Munian, it's Areola. There is, I mean, I think Iñaki Williams, of course, his own brother is both he and Iker Munian are top 10 in all-time appearance at Athletic Club. So the story of Athletic Club's 21st century is still being written, and he could be that guy. He could be that talismanic figure that becomes a club legend, and I wish him the very best. I do. He has fun. He's friends with a lot of the guys and on the Spanish national team. So, Nico, it's fine. I think people were more frustrated that Barcelona seemed like, again, it's like asking Nico Williams to prom over and over and over again. They kept asking, and Nico was like, I'm just thinking about it. I'm feeling some things, and then all of a sudden, actually, I already decided I was going to go with my ex-boyfriend. I'm going back to Athletic Club, and we're going to go to prom together, right? And that's what I know you and I have been to prom for like 20 years. But for me, it's been 20 years. For you, it's been more than that. But so we haven't been to prom in a while. That said, Nico Williams, it just feels like people were more frustrated at the way that the club missed out on him as opposed to actually being frustrated about missing out on him.
Like, for me, I was on the record as not thinking much of Nico Williams. Still don't. I think when you look at him off the ball, he may as well go sit in the stands when the other team has the ball. He hasn't changed that in years and is not likely to. I found the whole thing funny because I felt like he was using Barcelona, who everybody knew couldn't register him, to do one of two things: get more money from Bayern or more money from Athletic Club. It turned out to be the latter. Good on him. I would wager that he and Lamine Yamal had some private chats that must have been pretty hilarious. I don't think he was ever coming to Barcelona. I don't think any of that was serious. I think that what Laporta should have said is, I said the train left last year, the train left. So don't call us, right? For me, it was, Griezmann 2.0, except, Griezmann came, unfortunately. But I feel like once a player jerks you around that first season, your dignity as a big club should be cool. Thanks for playing. When they come back the next year saying, oh baby wait, you say, you know what, you had your shot. We likely would have won a trouble without you. So why do we need you? Thank you. Right? I think that we'll see what shakes out in preseason. Don't forget that Flick did run out Balde as a left winger for a couple of sections of matches last year. So I'm not entirely certain that is not far from his mind.
Can we sit on that? Because that is the number one thing actually I'm looking for in preseason. I said this on the feed yesterday, and I keep calling them the preseason 8, but I am really high on the 8 players that being Hansi Flick, is taking with him, because it really is one of those has to hit as another left back option. Geoffrey Torrens is just 18, so I'm not putting anything on him. Landy Fornay is just 18. I'm not putting anything on him. You have on the left wing, you have Dro Hernandez, is 17 years old. You have Jan Virgili, is 17 years old. And you have, those are the left back options. The left wing options. And then on the right, you have Ibrahim Diarra. You have Guy Fernandez, who can play at 4 or 5 different positions. Same thing with Tony Fernandez, can play at 4 or 5 different positions. Juan Hernandez can play at many positions. A lot of these preseason 8 players that are being brought, if that is who Hansi Flick does bring, are all very versatile. They all play multiple positions with the U19s or Barca Athletic. So I'm not saying that, all these new 8 players are going to come in and be important players. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if Hansi Flick can solve one of the problems in the first team with 2 of these 8 or with one of these players, then you've done what you need to do. That is the point of La Masia. So I know that many have said that La Masia is now that generation, and this is true. If you're a La Masia player who is now the age of 16, 17, 18, you're looking at first team, you're going, I'm a right winger. I'm never getting that first team. Lamine Yamal is there for the next 15 years. And that's true. You're probably not going to be the starting right winger at FC Barcelona if you're a 16, 17, 18-year-old right winger in the academy right now, because that spot is done for you. If you're a left back, you're going to be like, well, I'll be a backup to Balde probably for most of my career, and maybe some of the other spots on the field. Or if I'm a right center back, Pau Barcy, he's blocking that position. And then the midfield, well, Bernal might wind up blocking that position, or Casado, but even Casado, I didn't think he'd ever push in the first team, and he did. And Casado solved a need and solved a problem. Same thing with what I watched Gerard Martin 2 years ago at Barca Athletic. If you had told me, yeah, I know. If you still had told me he's in the first team, I'd still be surprised after watching him. But the point is, 2 years ago, Hansi Flick, at least, who knows a lot more about football than I do, felt like Gerard Martin could solve a problem as a backup left back. And hey, that guy played in the semifinal of the Champions League. So who the hell are we to say that he can't do that? So what I'm saying is, from the preseason 8, it seems like 3 of those options could solve a problem and be a backup left back or late game left back to push Alejandro Balde forward as a left winger. And again, all you need is 25 minutes out of that permutation so that Rafinha is not playing 90 minutes twice a week. That's really what you just need to do. You have to have enough players to be able to rotate and figure things out. And when it's Copa del Rey time and you're playing on the road at Ibiza, hey, Jose Torrens, we're going to throw you out there, buddy, for 90 minutes, and we're still going to get to the next round of the Copa del Rey because you're good enough to do that. And that is what you need from those young players this season. So if Hansi Flick, as I said, can extract another solution out of those young players, then to your point, I do think that is what Hansi Flick is looking for. He is looking for reinforcements for behind Lamine Yamal. Again, whether that's Tony Fernandez, Ibrahim Diarra, whoever it is, he's looking for, hey, what is another player that we can throw in there? Then again, he's looking at Dro Hernandez. He's looking even at Jofre Torrens, who can also play on the left wing. How can we solidify some depth on that left side? I think those are the 2 things that he's looking to do in the preseason. And I think that also dictates why he chose the 8 players that he did to bring to the preseason, if those are indeed the players that he's bringing.
Yeah, I mean, and don't forget that. So when I watched Balde live in 2 different matches the summer that he promoted. And I watched him both times and said, no way in hell is this guy ready for the first team. And from that Bayern match to the next season, he took off like a rocket. Martin began the season as, what's this guy have compromising photos of Flick or what? To by the end of the season, he had improved so much. And I will buck the narrative that Martin was a bad fullback. Martin is a better defensive fullback than Balde, right? In terms of like maintaining position. He's tall enough to win headers. So I'm will buck the logic that Martin is a bad fullback. Martin is not Balde. And once you assess him in his context, he's more than good enough to give you 20 minutes, a half hour. Hector Fort is better on the left than the right. That's another option. I think that Flick will have to be creative in solving problems because, and we'll touch on this later, but I think the reason they have not yet pulled the trigger on Rashford is not because they're thinking about Diaz. It's not because they're thinking about anybody else. I don't think they can register players. And so Flick will have to have solutions within what he already has to solve these issues. Luckily, right now, I've never seen a more fruitful crop of talent from the academy. I can't remember the last time there were that many potential.
Yeah.
In
terms of quantity, we've never seen this. Like it's been 25 years, and I've even done my digging back. Like I did that big long profile on the most famous scout in history, the one who brought so many of the players from the 60s and 70s, Boter Mas, who's again basically built La Masia in terms of the scouting department, all those things. And even in the best of times in the 60s and 70s, when economically the club had to just bring through 9 of the 11 players, they also had, again, at that time, before the 1994 Bosman ruling, most of your players could not be international or could not from other places. They had to come from Spain. So through those restrictions, Barcelona did have to pluck kids off the streets in Catalonia and put them playing for FC Barcelona. So, but even in those eras, like those players were fine, but there's a reason why we only talk about 2 or 3 of those players. That's why Barcelona didn't win the Liga until 1974, until a superstar Johan Cruyff shows up and brings along these skins and some of these other quality players in the 70s. So even with that group, when they had to, it didn't happen. And even the Messi and Piqué and Fabregas era, yes, Victor Vasquez, there were good players. Like that was probably the 1987 class is probably the next group. But from the ages of, again, right now, 16 even to 20. So let's cut off Gavi being the cutoff at the top of there, and then 16 with Tony Fernandez and Guy Fernandez being the bottom of this. I have, yes, to that point, I've never seen the club have this kind of talent. Because again, Xavi, Iniesta, Messi, they were years apart from one another. I mean, you're spanning 7-8 years there. Puyol and Messi are the same generation because they won in the teams that we remember, but they weren't physically the same generations in La Masia. That wasn't the case. It was Pedro, Messi, Piqué, Fabregas. I think Busquets and Pedro, again, being younger than Messi a little bit, but no, they were the same group there. Iniesta was actually pushing to the top of that generation, and Xavi and Puyol are just in another generation. So, like, I say Pedri is not La Masia, no, but like if you're gonna, I know the club loves to count made in La Masia for Araujo, but even if you count Araujo as made in La Masia, that is a different generation than what you're dealing with now. The group from 16 to 20, I do say this because again I've watched enough of them where I would say that like Joe Fernandez is better than what Carlos Tellez was. I think that you have, no offense to Carlos Alenia, but the club currently has, just doing a quick math here, 7 attacking midfield options that I would trust and I think were better in the academy at 16, 17 than Carlos Alenia was. And that's just what we're talking. And you and I, again, remember going back to 2017 when you and I were pleading, right? Like there's got to be some player coming in from the academy, Carlos Alenia, you've got to be the guy. And I think that there are 8 kids who are 17 years old who have higher ceilings than Carlos Alenia did. And it's a different world right now with the academy. And that is all the positives that Barcelona are solving their own problems. And it's so funny because again, you and I have been covering this team long enough that it is a philosophy where we just have to believe it. Like I know that there are those who are saying, there are generations where the kids aren't good enough. And I've said that before too. Where it's like you can't say a kid is better than he might be, and a lot happens. So again, it's also the quantity of it. I don't think any of those 8, if you tell me Landy Frey is going to be in the 3rd division of Spanish football in 2 years, fine. Unfortunately, he had a lot of injuries early on in his career. He may not get the crossing and the ball playing that he needs to. He may not make those improvements. That's fine. But I would be shocked if none of the 8 who is coming with the preseason are regulars. One of them is probably going to be a regular in the Barca first team within the next 2 years. And I think that I could put a 95, 99% stamp of approval on that one, just because that group is just so talented.
Yeah, I mean, when you watch them, and it's one of the useful things about Barca One as an app is to be able to watch these players and watch their matches and watch them for a full match, right? Not a highlights.
That's true. We can do that now. Like Barca One, and exactly, we can actually physically do that now. All right.
Right, and so you go and you watch, Joffrey Torrens, and you think this guy is better now than Balde was when people were talking about, Balde being the next great left back, right? I mean, the talent right now that this team has right at its disposal. So I mean, for me, I don't, Williams, Rashford, Diaz. For me, I don't think the club should be throwing money at people who won't be better enough than what they have.
Like I'm totally fine if Hansi Flick though looks at those 8 kids and goes, actually none of these are ready right now, and so he asks Laporta and goes, hey, if we can register him, Marcus Rashford, we could do a lot worse on the left wing as a backup. And I think that is totally fair because he plays multiple positions. Again, he will not be, they don't have to have that obligation to buy. And if they do, it'll be something they can afford and he has to earn that and all those different things. So if you bring him in on loan, if Hansi Flick, he is the manager. So if he says these kids aren't ready, then those kids aren't ready. And that's kind of as reductive as it sounds with Marcus Rashford, that is kind of how it is. Because I also say too, Kevin, trophies are not guaranteed. So if Lamine Yamal at 25, you think, okay, by that time, Barcelona, they'll just be able to blink and they wake up and they've won a treble. But again, football changes. Everything changes so much. And I know that there are, again, 11 players so crucial to Barcelona under the age of 25. And you think, oh, this team is going to grow together and all those things. But no, like there are temptations outside of Barcelona, which, again, if you're a player that makes a lot of money, that's usually not the case because you want to stick around way too long. And that's a Ter Stegen. And like, I don't know. There's so many examples that we can have about players who just kind of want to hang out. And why would you leave Barcelona? But when you have players that are growing as a unit.
I think that ceilings are weird, right? I mean, I mutter under my breath sometimes, what if this is the best Lamine Yamal that we're seeing, right? I mean, you can't rule out. I mean, look at Ansu Fati, right? I mean, every amazing talent is one bad tackle away from being done. And I think you have to move through life with that reality. The other thing you have to look at last year's team compared to this year's team and recognize that Rafinha will not produce the same numbers this season that he did last season. Neither will Lewandowski. And so you have to either find someone to make those numbers up, or my preferred answer is you have to concede less dumb goals, right? I mean, that last year's team conceded so many dumb goals, and they conceded dumb goals because midfield can't stop anything from moving through it. Because, Lewandowski can't press. Lamine Yamal sort of, plays at pressing every now and again. Really, the only one pressing there was Rafinha. So that first line of the press that ideally sets up the second line in the midfield was non-existent. And the midfield was, Pedri and De Jong and, Casado and right. And so that second line was not physical, too hokey, or De Jong, who was neither. And so that second line is gone. And so right away, the back line is facing a jailbreak, right? Mm-hmm. Winger with open space, free runners. And so what I say to people is the reason that they conceded so many dumb goals last year, which I define as goals that were not savable by any keeper alive, right? I mean, they conceded an astonishing number of those, is because when you face a jail break and your center backs have to make decisions, it's hard to know which of the three guys running at you, right, to defend. Mm-hmm. And Martinez will be 1 year older, and he tailed off from mid-season on. I think even his mom would say that. I think that far too often, I think that that Kubarsi showed his age. He's fond of rash tackles that often concede penalties. He still lets his man get goal side of him because he's not very physical. So what happens is when those center backs face a number of folks running at them with Balde chasing back because he's gotten caught up the pitch, and Koundé is trying to swing back out from having pinched in to help midfield. Dumb goals are the result. And so if they can find a way, because once you acknowledge that the offense will not produce those same 3, 4, 5 goals a game, right? Then you have to say to yourself, okay, what if we didn't need 8 goals to advance in the Champions League semis? What if we didn't need 5 goals to get past Benfica, who is not good, right? You have to figure out a way to concede to to augment what your team can do. If you're not going to get more goals because you can't, then maybe concede fewer goals as an option. Maybe it's crazy, but that's how I'm thinking.
Well, we do not have time. I'm so sorry. I can't give you the time. We do not have time to say the big if questions about Juan Garcia and Ronald Araujo, because I think the big ifs relate to those two and the stipulations you just laid out about conceding the goals that they conceded last season. There are two names, I think, at the top of the list for me, Ronald Araujo and Juan Garcia, that could change that conversation completely. So again, that's content I have to worry about. Okay, so we're going to keep going through this. There was some controversy, and as enough people asked me on social media, Kevin, to talk about it here, but that's why I brought you on, because I know we're going to be not saying what people want to hear. But there was some controversy around Javier Tebas this week, because, I mean, it's a new week, so there's new controversy or whatever. And it was that the La Liga president said that he met with Athletic Club to discuss Barcelona looking to Nico Williams, and the confidential information that the president of the Liga reportedly did share with the Basque Club about the FC Barcelona's finances, which, you know what the funny thing though, Kevin, and this is about all the one-to-one thing. The one-to-one right now, I'll remind people, again, if you've missed shows or whatever, that there was a financial auditor, so a third-party auditor, Crow Global, or the particular Spanish branch, or Club España, who they are the ones, as that third-party auditor, decide whether or not the revenue that Barcelona made is can be or should be counted towards the budget that needs to be approved to register players. So there's 100 million euros kind of floating in the ether for these 475 VIP seats that Barcelona has already sold off, which is fine. I mean, it's VIP seats, so if you're sad about those seats, then you weren't going to get those anyway. But FC Barcelona has already sold off those seats. And that money that Barcelona said, hey, we've sold these seats, and for the Gamper Trophy match, that is where that all begins. So you can put that on our books. We can be accountable for that revenue that is going to be made. That's 100 million euros. And if you give us that 100 million euros and put that towards our budget, then we can register all our players, and we are back to the one-to-one. And Tebas and the Liga agree with that. That is true. But because the City Council of Barcelona has not yet approved reopening the stadium for the Gamper match, which now you're talking about the fourth match day, which I believe, Kevin, is past the registration deadline. So
Yes, it
that
is.
is how it gets so complicated. So I told people, any person in your life that is wearing white, or even the ones who are wearing bright red and it says Red Devils on it, they're still mad about 2009 and 2011, or wearing blue, whoever it is in your life that are wearing other colors that are telling you Barcelona are broke. Barcelona are not broke. They have never been broke. Even when Bartomeu had them in insane amounts of debt, they've never been broke because they rely heavily on their club that in the Liga split of the pie, the broadcasting rights, they do have the ability to get back to the semifinals of the Champions League. Like, they're a good enough club to do that, and they did. So they make a little bit of money on broadcasting rights, even when they were in the Europa League. They were still surviving, even through the pandemic, all those things. The club has turned the leaf on all those things, and it will be back to one-to-one. They will make enough revenue. Barcelona, very much like Real Madrid, they are revenue-making machines. And yes, they need to tap into the younger generation, but there's a 17-year-old kid named Lamine Yamal that is really going to help Barcelona out in the marketing department. And really, if I'm the marketing department and we had to say goodbye to Messi like 4 years ago, and now here comes Lamine Yamal, I mean, as a marketing director at Barcelona, I'm like, I do have the best job. This is the best thing. Like, things were really bad at home for 3 years, but things are really looking up when a 17-year-old kid is now becoming one of the most marketable players in world football. That's great. So anyone crying about Barcelona's future is wrong. But as far as registering new players in the next 3 weeks, that is still a problem, or the next month and a half, whatever it is. That is still a problem for what I laid out. So I'm not saying that Tebas is right. Tebas is wrong, because if the auditors do approve those, and if the City Council of Barcelona does approve that Barcelona can return to the Camp Nou in as much time or whatever it is, like if Barcelona meets all their deadlines, very much like the issue about registering Dani Olmo, very much about registering the issue of registering Jules Koundé. If Barcelona, it's an if they wind up sliding into home plate in enough time, then any new players like Juan Garcia and anyone else will be registered, and there won't be a problem, and all this will blow over. But Nico Williams, one of those guarantees in their contract, Barcelona, I think, took a little bit of exception to that. So I want to push back a little bit on your point, Kevin. I do think that the negotiations of this, my favorite podcaster ever and Total Soccer shows Daryl Grove, rest in peace to him, always said things can be two things. Two things are true about Nico Williams in this transfer. He did use Barcelona to make more money from Athletic Club and beef up that contract. Yes, he did. 100% he did. And part two of that is, yes, Barcelona is struggling to register new players because of what they're dealing with the one-to-one and Liga. Is Tebas being more difficult and making it difficult on Barcelona by putting things out in the media? Yes, but I also don't think it matters. I know it sounds so dumb, but Tebas could be wrong. Should he have not done that? Yeah, probably. But also, this is public information. If you and I can talk about this on a podcast, then obviously Tebas and Athletic Club didn't even need that meeting with Tebas to know all those things about the registrations about Nico Williams. So I think that's a lot of this is what they talked about, but that's public knowledge. So it's not a defense of Tebas. I think Tebas is sneaky. He's a little bit, there's a bit of a I don't know. There's this unruly je ne sais quoi about him. Maybe it's because authority, these suits just make me uncomfortable. But yes, I think Tebas is sneaky. I don't love him as a president in relation to FC Barcelona, but I also think it doesn't matter. It's the auditors and the financial people, guys who you never have to see their names or faces that you don't know about. They're the ones actually signing off on these budgets and signing off on this really, really boring stuff. Tebas is merely the face to all of it. So he gets all the vitriol. He gets all the hate. But yeah, I mean, he could definitely handle it a little bit better, but very much like Laporta, like Perez, most of the presidents of the Liga teams and most of the bigwigs in the Liga and in Spain. What does Tebas want more than anything else, Kevin Williams? Attention. The dude loves attention, and if that's what you're going to fault him for, the dude loves talking to the media. He loves attention. That's what he loves. So all this stuff is what gets him attention. If that's what you're going to cry about, sure. But as far as him really being this nefarious, evil puppeteer, I've never believed in it. I just can't believe in it. I just think the dude sees a camera in his face and goes, you know what? I got things to say because it's a new day and I put a suit on today and I got something to say. I think that's all it is.
So I've said this previously. His two big clubs are Real Madrid and FC Barcelona. And logically, and he is a logical person, although also a weasel, logically, you don't want one of your big two clubs to not do well. The only things he has said are things that are true. They can't register players. And so, but let's not forget, this fan base needs a boogeyman. Right? They need someone to refocus on to avoid the reality. And the reality is right now, the board does not have it. Family show is things dialed in, right? So this, the city council saying, well, this August 10th thing is news to us, right? Not being able to register players, not being in the one-to-one. If the club were dialed in and functioning and locked in, it wouldn't matter what Tebas had to say. People forget that, right? Because that's super convenient. Well, Tebas is keeping us from getting Nico Williams. No, the club's finances are because they can't register players. And
wait, Kevin, let me just interject and ask you, again, we've been covering this club for a long time. And if I remember it, the first SBI Barca presentation was 2014, wasn't it? It was quite a few years ago. And I remember back then, that was so far before a global pandemic that there were million when it was presented that it was yeah, right, exactly. The number that SBI Barca, there was always going to be consternation. I mean, Real Madrid just went through with their own stadium renovation. When you renovate stadiums and you're talking about the B, not the millions, but the B in billions when it comes to loans and things like that, yes, Barcelona, again, Real Madrid, Barcelona, they've been around for 120 plus years for a reason. And yes, Barcelona has a beautiful city and tourism and fans, and that they were filled their stadium. And so Barcelona will be fine in paying their loans off. Again, broadcasting rights and all those things, which could change. Yes, things change in the future, but the way that football is going, they might have to sell their soul down the road to a demon, but I do think that both Real Madrid and Barcelona can continue to, with the popularity of those clubs on a global market, they will be fine. But it's going to take time because, again, between a stadium renovation and a global pandemic, and sure, all the dumb moves are made for Coutinho, Griezmann, like that did not help. Paying 100 million euros for 3 players each is not going to help you when they flop from the marketing side, from a trophy side, all those different things. And losing Messi, losing your most marketable player in the club's history didn't help as well. So all of those factors at the same time in a 10-year window as you're doing the stadium renovation is obviously not going to help your bottom line. And the club, going back 10 plus years, already knew some of these things, except for the global pandemic. If they did, they should have told somebody about it in advance. But they knew so many of these things in advance. And you're just, again, you're living that reality. And what I tell people is, it's fine. It's fine. They made a semifinal and they can't get back to the 1-1, but a team that made the semifinal was restricted. Couldn't play with all their toys in the playground. But there's a lot of toys that they were playing with, and they made a semifinal of Champions League. So I don't know. It's okay. It's okay, everybody.
Well, and the other thing is, and I will be the first one to stand in the line that says that, Bartomeu is the worst president in club history. That said, I think that he is also being blamed for a lot that was just stuff happening. I mean, who could have predicted a pandemic? And had that pandemic not come, the club's economics would have been really different. And don't forget that with a club that makes $1 billion in revenue, dumping a couple $100 million on some players that didn't pan out should not be the end of the world. So for me, I feel like everything around Bartomeu, everything around Tebas is overblown. The reality is FC Barcelona does not have it together. And until when you'll know when they get it together, because Tebas will go away because he's like, it's fine. They got it together.
I mean, I think
they have it together.
I also think people misdirect the Tebas criticism. My criticisms of him over his tenure are twofold. Is that one, the Premier League in the English-speaking audiences, especially in India as well, and China, they're just so far along in broadcasting rights and the setup of fan interaction. And yes, obviously English speaking Premier League they've been working on that since the 80s. This predates Tebas as well. But I think that when I see La Liga and when I interact with La Liga, even the La Liga website, like it's just the La Liga itself, I think spends a lot of time on the edges, and they don't actually they didn't work as hard enough for the last 15, 20 years to try to keep pace. Not financially with the Premier League. I'm not talking about like ownership and oil money and things like that. I'm just talking about its presentation to the fans. I just think it's not been good enough and has been below par. Like the fact that even FC Barcelona, the clubs individually paying for things, like the websites crash too much. Like you and I know this. Like the Liga websites crash too much. The Barcelona's website, Real Madrid TV, like all these different things that were part of where La Liga need to go in the 21st century. I've just been lacking behind the Bundesliga as well a little bit. When the Bundesliga is a little bit more advanced in all of those different things and fan outreach and all those things. So that would be my issue. And then the CVC deal, I know it got a lot of clubs as smaller clubs, even Real Betis. Like that was a get out of jail free card. I get that. But the CVC deal, I felt like very much like if you're going to criticize Barcelona for mortgaging their future with all these levers, I think he did the same thing to the Liga. And I just have to believe that when you have sports and you have the amount of money that the stars in the Liga could make you, I think there should have been a better deal on the table there. And I mean, if you want to say that he's this savior or he's the martyr that's falling on the sword and taking all the blowback because clubs are making bad decisions and putting themselves in danger, because obviously, we're going back to the financial crisis in 2008 when Valencia and all these other clubs around Sporting Gijón, there's a reason why Sporting Gijón and Zaragoza are not in the first division, because they made bad decisions. Deportivo La Coruña, look what they did themselves. Malaga, like around the financial crisis.
Every club would if they were given the freedom to spend money like drunks and think, we'll make it up. Every club would. So, I mean, while I think that, Tebas is a, wanky dude, kind of a weasel, and has a big
Hmm.
mouth, I mean, he hasn't been entirely horrible. I think that, the league, and look, I mean, the thing about the Premiership is, despite the fact that it's mostly being played by foreign players, there there is the idea that this is an English league, or this is an English speaking league, and North America loves things British. Can't get around it. The perception
I
of
think they love things they can understand without doing any work. I think they
correct,
understand things that they can they can just
correct,
take in and absorb, and that are already their way. I think that's the North
and
American way.
while La Liga has better football, more talented players, top to bottom, that perception is it's these little European guys falling around and weeping when they're kicked. And then there's the language barrier. So La Liga will never, ever be anywhere near what the Premiership is. Never, ever, 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 ever. It can be that number two slot. And if they aren't careful, Liga, now that PSG is where it is, could, I mean, because like, talk about marketable players. So, I mean, it's, Tebas
Well,
is
I think
elite.
there's a huge. Well, Ligue 1 is so weird though, because Kevin, it's two different things. PSG has created they are a lifestyle brand. They were the first club to pair with Jordan Brand. So there are so many people wearing PSG stuff around New York City who have
Yeah.
no idea who Nevish is, or who have no idea. They definitely don't know how to say Kvara's name. Like, if you and I can't say Kvara's name, they definitely don't know how to say Kvara's name. And they're just wearing this stuff. They don't know who's on the back, whatever it is. It doesn't matter to them. It is a lifestyle brand. And you're seeing how even Lyon being sent down, or potentially being sent down to Ligue 1, there are issues in Ligue 1, and the broadcasting rights of Ligue 1, like, strip all those clubs of all this value. Like, Ligue 1 to me is an absolute disaster, because there is PSG, you're right, who's the best team in world football right now, and then you have all these other clubs that would, I think, arguably barely be able to compete in the Bundesliga and the Liga now, because they're financially, it's hard for them to string things together. I think Marseille would be fine. I think Rennes would be fine. I think Lille would be fine. Like, so around the edges, yes, the next like 5-6 would be fine. But when you're talking about the bottom half of Ligue 1, like, you're talking about real financial issues now, and that is only going to get worse in Ligue 1. Like, PSG they're making the money. It's not like they're, I don't know their CBA. Like, I'm not sure how much of their pie that they share in comparison to what Real Madrid and Barcelona and Atletico Madrid do with everybody else. But Kevin, we are so off the beaten path here. Do you mind if we get to the next topic?
In the
We're running
weeds,
out of
man. We're in the weeds.
time. Okay, so this is the last boring thing I think we're going to do, and that is, Barcelona do have a new player, but I add the biggest asterisk to this, and I don't mean to be mean, because again, the kid is not at fault here, and it's just things you have to do. It's agreements or whatever. So Andy Barra, for those who don't know who that is, he's the agent of Dani Olmo and Joan Garcia. Now, there was a player linked a few weeks ago, Cardoso Varela at Dinamo Zagreb, a young player from Portugal who wound up finding himself in Croatia. He was linked to the club. Why is that? Well, he's also a client of Andy Barra. And then the player that the club just signed the other day, Lovro Chelfrey, who likely will jump in with the U19s, he is also a client of Andy Barra, who is also a client of Dani Olmo. Who also is the agent of Dani Olmo and Joan Garcia. So Barcelona will pay around $300K to $400K to acquire 50% of Lovro Chelfrey, an 18-year-old, and his rights from NK Kustija. I butchered that. It's a first division team in Croatia. And you're like, Dan, you've butchered that name before. Yes, I have, because that is the same club that Mika Faye came from, because Mika Faye's agent is also, right, Andy Barra. Here we go. So the club will also have 2 years to decide whether to buy the remaining 50%, with the total amount potentially rising to $2 million. I don't think this is that bad. Basically, this is a favor. It's a 300 to 400K favor that is being done for a player that, in the youngster in Chelfrey, who used to be at Dinamo Zagreb came up through their academy, then made the move to NK Kustosia. So I think this was in the works even for a few years, because again, Danny Olmo and all those other players that Andy Barra has been linked to with Barcelona, you got to play nice with the agents, and 400K is not that bad, but
It's
hey,
no
this
money.
kid's also 18.
It's no money.
Right, this kid's also 18. He could be good, right? He likely won't be. He will likely be gone when he's 21 years old. But he also could, again, I'm not to disparage an 18-year-old kid because, hey, that kid could figure out. And same with Mika Faye. Like, Mika Faye is going to probably have a pretty good career in France with Rennes. Like, he is just fine. Like, he's a good player. He's fine. It just was a timing thing and what Hansi Flick wanted. It just didn't work out. So this kid, hey, Chelsea might have a really long and fruitful, great career, sure. But again, this is also done as a favor. So I just want to say that, like, yeah, you're like, who's this kid? Who the heck is it? Well, there's a lot of red string here that it's not that difficult to understand. And if this is what price you have to pay, that's how agents make their money as well in these little tiny commissions. So everybody's got to make their living. Like agents aren't also these like evil Weasley whatevers. Like, yeah, they do some things that are not great, but like they also are looking out for their clients. And this is another example of a guy looking out for his client. So it could be a lot worse. I'll tell you that.
Well, the other thing is so many clubs do it. And people say, oh, Barca gets hooked in with one agent and he gets a lot of clubs do that. And for me, the fiscal reality of a club that has a billion in revenue, right? All things like no pandemic, blah, 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 is that we're not talking about sums that matter. We're not. I mean, even like I remember back when they signed Douglas for $5 million, right? And people were like, "Oh, money laundering," and I was like, $5 million is no money. It's like you and me buying a latte, right? It's like, okay, well, we'll give it a shot. I mean, he has pace. He's Brazilian, maybe, right? I mean, it's not like so. For me, I would be much more offended and was much more offended by them dropping that kind of money on a Coutinho, right? Than I was
And that was 125 million euros.
Oh, yeah, million, right? I mean,
million.
to me, $5 million, like, okay, they went to an agent and they bought a latte, and the latte didn't taste quite right, and they dumped the Brazil. Like $5 million. So I think that people lose sight of the fiscal reality of because I mean, people think $5 million, like I could live a long time on $5 million. Yes, you could, but $5 million is what, some fractional percentage of $1 billion? I mean, right? Who cares? That's what for me, it's like, who cares? If some of these kids pan out, that's awesome, right? If they don't, it's no money. Who cares?
I mean, like Noah Darvish going to Stuttgart, and like that's not like they took a chance on a really high level prospect. Like Noah Darvish could still be a really good player at 24 years old, and I think Stuttgart is a perfect example for him, like perfect place for him to go. Like even Idas Moriba, I was saying yesterday on the feed that when Baba Kuruma, his younger brother, when he was signing his professional contract, which he just did last month, Man City was all over it. Like, and Man City is often over. Once a Barcelona player is about to turn 16, Man City is already on the phone. And that is very true. That's been happening going back to Eric Garcia and other ones who've been tempted. And Arsenal used to do it as well. Again, think Cesc Fabregas. Think a name that you probably haven't heard in a decade, John Terrell, would be another one, example of another player that wound up, he wound up having a good career at Birmingham. But whatever, the point is that, there's a lot of young players who are tempted other places as well. But like Idas Moriba, the argument I could almost make now in hindsight is maybe Barcelona sold high on him. Maybe RB Leipzig came in and that was the best version of Idas Moriba. And he knew that. And he kind of knew what his own limitations were. And so they sold high on him and he made his money up front. And Kevin, you and I say, and this is how I'm going to end this segment because we have one more to do real quick. And again, this will be a longer show, but you and I have said for years now, get your bag. And again, I'm a freelancer living in America. So I definitely always tell people, get your bag. That's what you do up front because our time is limited and we don't know. So, if you have the opportunity, like I've said many times at this podcast, the minute somebody comes and hands me a big check and say, we'd love to buy the rights to the Barcelona podcast, and we're going to take this over. Here's a giant, big, awesome check, Dan. Here you go. I'm going to say, I love all of you. Forza Barca forever and ever, but siempre Barca, you know what I mean? Like I'll say it, and we get our bag, but until that door knocks with the check, you have to deal with me and having conversations like the one we're about to have, Kevin, which our last segment today. Even Rakitic has retired. So I wanted to do a little ode to him, but kind of take us in a different direction. I had him as number 48 in 2020 on my list of top 50 players as terms of contributions to Barcelona. So again, the arguments there is, I'm not here to argue about Luis Figo. I had him at in the 20s. People were like, he absolutely can't be on the list at all. And I'm like, yes, but he still was at Barcelona. It's just revisionist history, whatever. Point is, right, I know what you're saying on it. Point is, like, I'm talking about the contributions that these players made. I think you cannot write the history of FC Barcelona and their 50 best players without talking about even Rakitic. I think he's on that list. He had 138 appearances. He had 50-some goals. Like, he was just, or 30-some goals. He was a good player for a long time. Scored the first goal in a Champions League winning treble season. Like, the guy was a good player. Now, 2 questions for you. The easy one is, do you have Rakitic on your top 50 list? And how do you remember him? And then part 2 of that is the bigger question is, when I made that list, he was top 50. But now looking at it 5 years later, which don't spoil all of my work that I'm going to do in a new clip for this, but there's a lot of current players that likely broke into that top 50 with Lewandowski, Rafinha, Lamine Yamal, Pedri, De Jong, Gavi, Koundé, Araujo. None of them were in the top 50 then, because all of them, Pedri and De Jong, none of them were with the club at the time. Well, Lamine Yamal was, but he was 11 years old. I didn't put him on the list when he was 11. He wasn't good enough just yet to be on that list when he was 11 years old. And then Ter Stegen was on the list, and the other argument I might make is now 5 years on, Ter Stegen helped them win the 2018 and 19 championships, Liga, I should say, and Ter Stegen already won a treble with the club, and now 5 years on, I don't know if Ter Stegen, even though he's the second most appearances for a goalkeeper for Barcelona, if he's still in the top 50. So, I mean, there's some I'm giving you a runway. There's a lot of places you could go with this. So please give me an ode to even Rakitic, and then tell me whether or not with all the current players that could be on that top 50 list, does Rakitic keep his spot?
Let me preface this by saying I don't believe that tenure should matter. Like, I would argue that Thierry Henry is in the top 50, right? And he didn't have anywhere near the appearances of anybody else. But he is a player who shifted the paradigm for the club, for the team.
I think I had him in top. He might have been in top 50. He was close. Yeah. I think he was close. Yeah. He's also my favorite non-Messi, non-Yesa player of all time. So I'm also severely biased for TD.
Yeah. Now, for me, Rakitic is higher than 48. Like, he's somewhere in the 30s. Because when you look at... So, a team needs for a great player to be many things, right? But for a player like Rakitic, who I think is an exceptional player, that player need be selfless, right? Whatever the team needs is what you do. Rakitic was a human lung who ran his legs off to keep Busquets from looking older than he was. And he did that for every year he was at the club. People forget the decline of Busquets began right around the time that Rakitic came. And Rakitic was liberating because suddenly all those runs that Busquets was just missing getting to, now Rakitic was there. So he ran his lungs off for that club. The goals, the intelligence, the selflessness. I keep coming back to that word because there are players who are really good, right? But they're not selfless, right? Not in that essential way that makes them the ultimate team player. Rakitic was, for me, the ultimate team player. He is a guy who, when you're picking your 11 aside, he's like the second name. People go, him? Yeah, because that guy will do whatever your team needs to do to win. Part of a treble, part of championships. I mean, what the Barcelona fan base did to that man was wrong. It was wrong in every way, and it began because he had the temerity to like go spend time with his family and have fun, and instead of finding a dark closet and slitting his wrist when they got bounced from Champions League. It's like, come on, really? I mean, like when you have a bad day at work, you go and jump off a mountain. No, you get on with your life. I'd say he's like somewhere in the mid 30s, like 35, 36, 38, right in that range. Now, second part, no. I think right now there is nobody on the club who makes that top 50. I wouldn't have put Ter Stegen there even before recent performance, right? I think there are players who have the potential to be there. Pedri.
So I looking through it all, Pedri was 76 when I did it in 2020 even. Like, he and Gabi have already made 100 appearances. And I think this is where I know tenure to you, I'm totally understanding that. That's why I had Brazilian R9 was in a top 15, because the one season that R9 had at Barcelona was like, it's incomprehensible to think about that.
It changed everything.
Exactly. That's why I had him he was in the top 15. The reason why Pedri and Gabi might already be here on that top 75, because again, this is also because a lot of in decades past, it was hard to play a lot of matches. So it is different, like how many total seasons as opposed to how many matches. But Pedri has already been at Barcelona and played a lot of matches and been a top, the fact that we were arguing, is he a top 2 midfielder, top 3 midfielder in world football last season? Like, Pedri has already put together enough of a resume at 22 for me to be like, okay, he's already done 150 appearances at the club, which puts him already in rarefied air. Like, when you go through that list, like, has Pedri been more important than and again, I'm going to use the opportunity to pull up the list here, but is Pedri more influential than Baquero was, than Neeskens was in the seasons he was there? Right? That's kind of already what the kind of player you're looking at to try to, not to say be better than, but people waited long enough. So yeah, so the list. So as far as the players that would break into top 50, right? You were there for Luis Enrique at Barcelona. Is Pedri already more important than Luis Enrique was at Barcelona? Guillermo Moore to the dream team, right? Because then that's kind of what you're looking at. Philippe Cocu from the late 90s, right? So that's kind of who Pedri has to be more important than. And I think the fact that he's already won multiple Liga trophies and Copa del Rey trophies, I would probably say Pedri is bigger than those players, because even on their own teams, I would argue the players I just named to you were not the most important at their position. So Pedri he's midfielder 1 for a Barcelona team for the last 2 or 3 seasons. And I think that almost already puts you in like verified air.
I mean, so I'll start off by saying Pedri was the best midfielder in world football last year, to my view, right?
Well, I think that puts you on the top 50. I think just that claim that you just made for Pedri, you can't say that about so many other players around him on that top 50 list. So I would that's my argument for Pedri.
For me, I think that the game has changed, and I think that it requires more. Like, part of my criteria for that list would be a player that has shifted perception, that has been this sort of galvanic, force that makes you go, whoa, right? And so, like, for me, if that is at my top 50 list, Pedri is like 51. He's right there. And if he keeps fit and has the same season he had this year as last, he's in the low 40s. Easy. I mean, for me, his thing right now is the years that he couldn't keep fit. I mean, don't forget, he's only had one season, right? One full season where he was fit. And in that season, he was the best midfielder in football. I think that, so that's why I hesitate to use appearances as one of my metrics because,
Yeah. I think that's a De Jong argument, right? Because De Jong is putting up those appearances. He's been at the club. I think just the years he's been at the club already puts him in like the 65th or 70th percentile of players at the club. Like he's been here a while. And like even Lewandowski is top 75 because the dude's already scored 100 goals in a club uniform. Like that puts him in already rarefied air. And the same thing's going to be said about Rafinha already. Like Rafinha has already done way more in terms of numbers than Diego Maradona ever did. And I had Maradona at like 35 on the list because of just how important he was to those teams in the early 80s. So Rafinha's already done that. And Rafinha had a Ballon d'Or-esque season for Barcelona, which again is something that if he wasn't Rafinha and he's already Brazilian, so if it was Rafinha Inho, you know what I mean? like that meme always shows you, like maybe it'd be something different. But that's why like Lamine Yamal, I could make an argument already that Lamine Yamal, like I'm looking at the other players, my number 51 is Pedro. If you're going to take Lamine Yamal in a Barcelona uniform or Pedro in a Barcelona uniform, who do you take? Already, I'm asking that about Lamine Yamal.
For me, right now, or, that concept of like, for me, right, paradigm shifting selflessness, Pedro. Which
is fine for you to say that because the other option is a 17-year-old kid. And I'm telling you that if you and I come back 12 months from now, I'm going to be screaming Lamine Yamal and I'm going to hang up on you. Like
but in 12 months, that might all change. For me, it's taken me a while and I still haven't fully forgiven him taking that shot when Pedro told him to take it to the corner. I still have not fully forgiven him for that shot, right? Yeah, he's 17, right? He got the raw on his shoulder a lot. But if he does that, they advance. And Pedro was very clear about this. I'm going to give you this ball, take it to the corner, right? So that aside, I think he's had really one amazing season, right? I think that, to make that list, he needs more. And not appearances, but that list, I think, is about not only shifting paradigms, but consistency.
I think that list is also about trophies too. And I think this group in particular, like Koundé is the reason I bring Koundé up as well in that list is because if this group now who just won a Liga trophy and a Copa del Rey trophy, if they, let's say, repeat that next season, just win the Liga, just win the Copa del Rey and the Spanish Super Cup, let's say they win the domestic treble again, then you're immediately, again, your group is going into verified air. Because, again, you and I have been supporting this club for a long time. I know my history. That's why you talk about the 61-62, the club of the 5 cups. That's why you talk about the dream team. That's why you talk about the Guardiola era, because it doesn't always happen. Like, you do have these generational moments in the club's history that it doesn't get. Again, trophies are not guaranteed. Like, the club has gone 15 years without winning major trophies. And so when it comes to even the 21st century, you only have to really talk about Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, Piqué, Busquets. Like, the list of like that team itself, Pedro is on that list too, like Puyol. So, but that group, that's 15 years of winning, and that's only 10 players on my list. And that's what, 1/3 of the total trophies that FC Barcelona has ever won. And that's 11 players we have to talk about. And so that's what I'm saying. If this group wins trophies, then all of them are going to be pushing on that list because winning is important. And I think Koundé, if he's a treble winner, if I can see you, that's why Eric Albidal is a top 75 because I see him raising a Champions League trophy over his head.
He's top 50. He's top 50. He's top 50. I'll die on that hill. But
okay,
if you're going by trophies, they won a domestic double with a Paulinho. Where is he on that list, right? So I don't think that trophies is your real. But that's me that's me being me. What I'm saying is that it's more than a trophy. It's more than trophies.
If
He is.
Messi comes out and says, you know that domestic double we won, man, Paulinho, he was the guy. I was number
You will
two.
argue that
Paulinho.
he was much more essential
Yeah.
than people know with those wall passes to Messi. He enabled so much of what Messi could do when no one else could because Messi was like, I'll make a run. I'm going to feed you this ball. And what you have to do is shape your body and just feed so I can keep running and then stop guys from chasing me. And he did that match after match after match. If had Valverde started him instead of Iniesta, they get past Roma. So I mean, he was a useful player. He's nowhere near on that top 50 list. But if you're like, well, trophies, then so for me, this current group, I think Pedri, if he has one more year like he had last year, he's there. I think if Rafinha would need, for me, 2 more seasons because again, it's that consistency, right? I mean, I don't think that a player like Young's anywhere near that list, right? Because he's been there, but what's he done, right? And he's been there while the team has won trophies, but what's he done?
Would you take the Young or Deco in terms of their careers at Barcelona?
Deco, yeah. And who would even hesitate? So lists like that complicated because I mean,
that's why they exist. Like it's for debate. I mean, Kevin, you know me too. Like again, we're laid enough in the weeds here that that I don't ever upset anybody on the internet, and so but nobody ever shares my content and yells at me enough for engagement. So for once in my life, if I could just get myself yelled at for once, that's why the list exists. That's why I make the list because I want people to be like, oh, that's the guy who makes bad choices with the top 75. That's what I want people to say. That's the idiot who does that, and they fill my mentions with this guy's an idiot, and then it goes viral. It sounds great to me. That sounds wonderful, Kevin. And then the check comes out the door. This is all one big master plan. Maybe I'm really the weasel here. But anyway, Kevin, you're definitely not. I mean, again, you've been here since you're an OG. You're in my top 5, not top 75. You're the Barcelona podcast. So thank you so much for your time. I know you got to get back to a very busy retirement. I know it's getting late over there. So, Kevin, I'll give you the final word here. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And as I want to bookend this with saying, I'm excited about the new season, and I hope you are too.
I'm over the moon about this new season, and I'll tell you if there are, for me, 3 players who are key: Gavi, Bernal, and yes, the worst CB in existence, Ronaldo. If Flick gets those 3 players where they need to be, I mean, I don't want to say treble, but I mean that the team will be better than last year. Those 3 players are essential.
Yep, it's all about that spine. It's all about that spine. So if you have a spine, you'll subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll leave a nice rating on podcast apps. Help me out on Patreon. That didn't go away for as low as $3. Again, you can help me continue to make these shows or become a community member and become a community member for free on Big Up as I start to do these streams again, because again, we're only 2-3 weeks away from the season beginning. And if you don't want to miss any of the content, I've got a lot planned and I'm in a new place. So my girlfriend and I are all set up here in the new apartment. So that means that the content machine is going to keep on turning out. And until next time, as always, where's the Barca?